want to do today is a bit of knee mobility and include both the release of muscle as well as the strengthening of the opposing muscle. The first thing to say is that this is only for when you've ruled out any other causes of knee pain, such as ligament issues or meniscus issues, tears and those sorts of things, patella tracking issues. So if you've ruled out anything more sinister and continue to get knee pain, then it's more likely to be muscular. But it's important to make sure that that you're not using these things if there's something more sinister going on in the knee joint. So the first thing that I do is to release the muscle. So the way the muscles work is that if these quad muscles or the lateral chain muscles are tight, they'll contract and pull up on the knee. They can also potentially pull down on the hip a little bit, but that tends to be hip issues is something else, and we'll talk about that another day. So if these muscles are tight because you tend to do a lot of have a lot of reliance on your quad muscles, then that'll pull up on that knee joint and cause some knee pain for you. So I've got a few different things that I use. Foam roller being one of them. So any sort of foam roller. I've got one of the cheap ones out here, but you can have the long ones, the short ones, whatever suits. What I would probably avoid is any of those really super knobbly ones, unless you're familiar with foam rolling and that's your preference. So if you're starting out with foam rolling, start with a smooth one, and you can certainly build up. I have a preference not for knobbly, either spiky balls or knobbly foam rollers. I tend to prefer the smoother things, and then use trigger point to get in specifically into the areas that I'm looking to target. So the first thing that I do, so the other things that I've got, when I'm starting out or if I'm traveling, I'll just pack a tennis ball. That way if I lose a tennis ball, I've only lost a couple of dollars worth, as opposed to a more expensive trigger point ball or trigger point. There are a few different versions of these. They're like a dog bone. This one's a PTP variation. I've also got Posture Pros, and you can also build your own. You can get 2 tennis balls or 2 trigger point balls, put them together, so long as they're the same size obviously, and then tape them together to create your own dog bone. So the first thing that I do is just foam roll, and I start at the bottom away from my hip, so I'm starting closer to the knee, and then I'll just gradually roll. And if I find a particularly tender spot, I might trigger point or I'll hold there. You can move laterally side to side or up and down. The pressure moves towards the heart, and then reset, pulling yourself back to the knee. Pressure towards the heart, and then reset. So foam rolling is a great way to start. It's essentially self-massage. So in terms of pressure, you're looking for a pain point of about 4 to 5 out of 10. So you're not going to excruciating pain levels. And if the 4 or 5 is still a little bit too much, then back that off. The way that you do that is to take the weight through your leg, lift yourself up a little bit more, or through your arm. And yes, this does tend to be a little bit of an upper body workout, because you're balancing your weight on your arm and on your leg, unless you're putting all of your body weight into it. Rolling up and down is a great way to start. So whether it's so that my lateral chain tends to be quite tight. If the quads at the front, the rectus femoris is particularly tight, then you might just do the fronts up and down. So again, rolling, resetting, rolling, and then resetting. So after you've foam rolled, if there's particular areas that you've noticed that are tight, you can use one of the trigger point methods. So using either a tennis ball, this is just a silicone ball, lacrosse ball, super cheap from Aldi, or you can get Kmart versions, or you can use a dog bone. So if I'm going to use a dog bone, I'll start this time. I keep the leg a bit more bent and apply pressure that way. So it's almost the same as foam rolling, but I'm doing much more small moves, and it's a mix between trigger pointing and foam rolling. Now the important thing to remember is to try to keep the muscle that you're working as relaxed as possible. So what you're not wanting to do is contract the muscle so that you've got those opposing forces working. So the contraction, meaning that the muscle is tightening and shortening, against you putting pressure, which is trying to encourage it to lengthen and reset. So keep the muscle as relaxed as possible, which is why I'm taking the force into this leg and into my elbow, and I'm keeping my quad, or the side of this quad, as relaxed as possible. So once you've trigger pointed, foam rolled, those sorts of things, the next thing to do, and you can either do it at a separate session or you can trigger point and then activate the muscles, whatever works for you, is to do some glute strengthening, because the likelihood is that you're relying on your quads to do some of the work that your glutes should be doing, and it may be that your glutes are a little weak. So lying on your back, just regular glute bridges, squeezing and driving down through your heels. So what we're looking for here is the knees to keep in line with the hips, drive down through your heels and engage the glutes. Now there will be some quad work in here, but essentially at the top of the glute move, the bridge, you're lengthening through here and you're tightening through your glutes. The next one is a single leg glute bridge. So this is really isolating each glute, and we're going up and down. Keep that toe raised so it forces the work down through the heel and keeps it into the posterior chain. So I'll tend to do 20 of each variation of this, and I'll finish with a glute bridge march. I keep my thumbs under my hips to make sure my hips stay high, and I march from leg to leg. Before I shift the weight, I'll make sure the opposing glute muscle is engaged before I lift up. So I'm making sure the muscle or the work is in the muscle that I'm looking to strengthen, which in this case is the glutes. So essentially what we're trying to do is release these muscles here, strengthen the glute muscles, and then what I would suggest is that you do perhaps do a training session with a PT like me, like anybody in the area that you're working with, to show you some other exercises and the technique to make sure that whatever you're doing isn't continually loading up those knees, such as when you're walking, when you're climbing stairs, which muscles to engage so that you're balancing the work, and there may be an imbalance happening that you need to work through as well to make sure that your knees are protected